Have you ever sat in the quiet of your home with nothing but the ticking of the clock and your own thoughts for company and wondered, is this loneliness or could this be something more, something deeper, even beautiful? There's a common belief, often whispered, sometimes shouted, that growing older means growing lonelier, that if you find yourself living alone past a certain age, you must be unfortunate or even a little bit sad. But let's take a moment and challenge that idea, shall we? Because what if, instead of something to fear, living alone in your later years is one of the greatest freedoms you can experience? You see, living alone doesn't mean being lonely. In fact, for many people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, it's just the opposite. It can be a time of rediscovery, a time of peace, a time when finally, after a lifetime of responsibilities, noise, and compromise, you get to live on your own terms. In this video, we're going to talk about that. We're going to explore 5 incredible benefits of living alone as an older person, benefits that are often overlooked, misunderstood, or underestimated. And while not everyone chooses to live alone, for those who do, or those who are considering it, it can be an empowering decision that leads to a richer, more fulfilling life. Let's begin with something simple, but powerful. There is a certain quiet magic in freedom. The kind of freedom that lets you wake up when your body tells you to, instead of when the alarm clock or someone else says you should. Living alone gives you that freedom. It allows you to shape your days in a way that truly suits you. If you feel like staying in your pajamas until noon, you can. If you feel like having toast and tea for dinner while watching the birds outside your window, there's no one to question it. It's your life, your rhythm, your pace. Many older adults I've spoken with say they rediscovered their natural rhythm once they started living alone. After decades of waking up early for work, making meals for others, or accommodating someone else's schedule, they finally began living by their own clock. One woman I know started painting in the evenings, something she hadn't done since her 20s, because she discovered that her most creative hours came after sunset. Another gentleman found joy in tending to his garden slowly, one plant at a time, without feeling rushed. There was no one telling him to hurry, no distractions pulling him away. Just him, the soil, and the simple pleasure of watching something grow. That's one of the quiet joys of living alone. It puts you back in the center of your own life, not in a selfish way, but in a healthy, nourishing way. After years, sometimes decades of being a parent, a partner, an employee, a caretaker, now is the time to be you, fully, authentically, without apology. And let's talk about another benefit that doesn't always get the attention it deserves: mental clarity and emotional peace. When you live alone, your home becomes a sanctuary, not just a space, but a safe space, free from conflict, noise, or emotional tension that can sometimes come with shared living. That doesn't mean you don't love others. It simply means that solitude can be healing. Think about how many decisions we make in life that are shaped by other people's opinions, moods, or energy. But when you're living alone, you're no longer reacting to someone else's emotional weather. If you're having a calm day, it stays calm. If you're feeling cheerful, there's no one there to dampen it. Your emotional landscape becomes yours to manage and protect. This emotional peace creates room for something many people overlook: reflection, time to think, to feel, to remember, to dream. Time to revisit old joys, process old wounds, and imagine what comes next. Some people journal, others meditate. Some simply sit with a cup of coffee in the early morning light and let their thoughts wander like clouds. That kind of space isn't always easy to find in a full house, but in a quiet home, it arrives naturally. Now, I want to pause here for a moment and make something clear. Living alone doesn't mean shutting people out. It doesn't mean isolation. It simply means that your home becomes your personal retreat, a place you control. Visitors are welcomed on your terms. You decide when to open the door and when to close it. That kind of control can be deeply empowering, especially as we age. Another wonderful benefit of living alone, one that might surprise some, is renewed confidence. There's something quietly powerful about managing your own space. Whether it's learning how to fix a leaky tap, organizing your kitchen just the way you like it, or handling bills and errands independently, it all adds up. Every little task you complete is a reminder that you're capable, strong, and fully in charge of your life. A woman I once met in a small seaside town told me that after her husband passed, she felt terrified of doing things alone. She'd never handled the finances, had never lived by herself, but within a few months, she was glowing. "I found muscles I didn't know I had," she laughed. "Not physical ones, though I did move some furniture, but inner ones. Strength, decision-making, even joy." That joy of self-reliance is real. It's not about pretending you don't need help. It's about discovering just how much you can do on your own. And when you do ask for help, it comes from a place of strength, not dependence. So far, we've touched on the freedom to live on your own schedule, the peace of emotional clarity, and the confidence that grows from managing your own space. These might seem like simple things, but they're powerful, especially in a world that sometimes treats older adults as though their best years are behind them. But the truth is, many people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s are discovering that living alone can be the beginning of a new chapter. One that's calmer, wiser, and full of small, everyday victories. And isn't that what life is really made of? Not the big, dramatic moments, but the little things. Making your bed just the way you like it. Reading late into the night without bothering anyone. Singing out loud while you wash the dishes because no one's around to tell you you're off key. These tiny moments add up to a deeply satisfying life when they're yours to shape. As we continue, we'll explore even more ways that living alone as an older adult can bring unexpected joy and opportunity. But for now, take a moment. Look around your space. Whether it's an apartment, a cottage, a house, or even just a room you've made your own. Ask yourself, what brings me peace here? What part of this space feels like mine, and mine alone? That simple awareness is the beginning of something beautiful. If we look closely, the beauty of living alone lies not only in freedom or peace, but in how it transforms us quietly, day by day. Once the distractions fade and outside voices grow distant, something new begins to grow within us, a deeper connection with ourselves. One of the most surprising and wonderful benefits of living alone in older age is the opportunity to rediscover your passions. Think about it. How often during your earlier years did your own hobbies take a back seat to raising children, building a career, or taking care of others? When the house was full, the time and space for your own interests were often limited, pushed to the corners of the day, or lost altogether in the busyness of life. But when you live alone, something changes. The silence that once might have felt unfamiliar becomes an invitation. An invitation to remember who you are, beyond your roles. Beyond titles like mom, dad, spouse, employee, or even grandparent. You begin to ask, what do I enjoy? What have I always wanted to try? It might be painting, gardening, playing an instrument, or finally learning to cook that dish you always loved as a child. Maybe you want to read more, write your life story, take up bird watching, or even learn how to use a tablet and explore the digital world. I knew a gentleman in his early 80s who began learning to play the harmonica just for fun. He'd sit by his window in the afternoon, playing tunes softly to himself. And he said those moments brought him more happiness than he ever expected. Living alone gives you the mental space and the quiet you need to focus. There's no television blaring in the other room unless you turn it on. No one is asking where you are or what you're doing. You set the tone, the energy, and the purpose of each day. And in that stillness, your true interests have a chance to rise to the surface. But let's go even deeper. Living alone in older age often allows for a stronger connection, not just with hobbies, but with yourself. It creates space for self-reflection, for real, honest conversations with yourself. You begin to understand what brings you peace, what gives you energy, what weighs you down, and what makes you smile without even trying. When no one else is around, there's no need to perform, no pressure to be anyone other than who you truly are. That self-awareness can be deeply healing. Maybe you've spent years putting others first, and now for the first time, you can truly listen to your own needs. Maybe you're finally making peace with old memories. Or maybe you're allowing yourself to dream about what the coming years could hold, instead of looking only at the past. This kind of connection builds a quiet strength, the kind that doesn't come from applause or approval, but from within. It's the strength of knowing who you are and being comfortable with that person. That's not something that happens overnight, but living alone gives you the time and space for it to happen naturally. Another remarkable benefit that often comes as a surprise is how living alone can improve your health and well-being. It might sound counterintuitive at first. After all, we're often told that being alone is unhealthy or isolating. But here's the key. Being alone is not the same as being disconnected. And when you're living alone with intention, you often become more attuned to your body and mind than ever before. You start noticing what foods make you feel good. You might start moving more, stretching in the morning, walking in the evening, dancing while you tidy up. You begin to listen to your own body's cues, when it needs rest, when it needs movement, when it needs nourishing. There's no one rushing you or distracting you. You're in tune with yourself, and with that awareness comes better choices. Many older adults who live alone say they actually eat better. They're more likely to prepare simple, nourishing meals for themselves because they're cooking in a calm space on their own schedule. They notice how certain foods affect their digestion, or their sleep, or their energy. That kind of mindfulness doesn't always happen in a noisy household. Even sleep can improve. With no one else's snoring, television noise, or alarm clock to interrupt your rhythm, your body begins to reset. You go to bed when you feel tired, wake up when you're ready. You start to build routines that suit your natural rhythm, not someone else's. And good sleep, as we know, can change everything. Your mood, your memory, even your heart health. Now let's talk about something that might sound a bit surprising. Stronger social connections. Yes, you heard that right. Living alone can actually strengthen your relationships. Because when you're no longer surrounded by people every minute of the day, you begin to appreciate the connections that truly matter. You reach out with intention. You make time for those who uplift you, not just those who happen to be near. Instead of being surrounded by noise, you choose your interactions. You pick up the phone and call an old friend. You invite someone over for tea because you want to, not because it's expected. And because you've had your quiet time, you're often more present, more engaged, and more grateful when you are with others. Some people even find that living alone helps them reconnect with family in a healthier way. When you're not sharing space, conversations can become more meaningful. You're less likely to argue about small daily habits and more likely to share real updates, real feelings, real support. And for those who enjoy technology, video calls, online groups, and messaging apps make it easier than ever to stay connected, on your terms. A quiet home, paired with occasional, meaningful interaction, can be far more nourishing than constant chatter with no depth. There's a quiet wisdom that begins to settle in when you live alone. Not because you have all the answers, but because you finally have the space to hear your own thoughts. You become the author of your day, and with that comes something powerful: choice. The choice to rest or move, to call or not, to eat early or late, to read or listen to music, or simply sit and watch the light change through the window. That choice is not just about freedom, it's about dignity, about respecting your own rhythm, honoring your needs, and knowing that your time and space have value. There's no shame in living alone in older age. In fact, for many, it's the first time they've ever truly experienced living for themselves. Not selfishly, but consciously, joyfully, quietly. Of course, every situation is different. Not everyone chooses to live alone, and not everyone wants to. But for those who find themselves in this chapter of life, by choice or by change, there is so much to be gained. New routines, new self-respect, new peace. And if you ever doubt that, just take a deep breath. Look around your home, however big or small, and notice something that brings you comfort. It could be the way the light hits your favorite chair, the sound of the kettle boiling, the neatness of your bookshelf, the photo on the wall that always makes you smile. These little details might seem small, but when you live alone, they become part of your daily joy. They are your companions, your reminders, your anchors, and they are yours. There's something deeply grounding about having your own space, especially as the world around you grows faster and louder. Living alone in older age creates a gentle buffer between you and all that noise, a kind of personal quiet that becomes sacred. And in that quiet, something else begins to grow. Self-trust. We often talk about trusting others, But trusting yourself is just as important. And living alone helps you build that muscle day by day. It happens in small ways. You begin to rely on your own judgment. You decide when it's time to rest and when it's time to take action. You learn that you're capable of handling situations you once might have thought were beyond you. Maybe you change a light bulb or rearrange the living room furniture all by yourself. Maybe you navigate an online appointment or manage a health issue with calm confidence. These things might seem small to someone else, but to you, they're victories. They remind you that even as you age, you're still learning, still growing, still strong. This self-trust spills over into every area of life. You start making decisions more easily. You stop second-guessing yourself. You feel less influenced by other people's opinions because you've learned to listen to your own voice first. That inner voice becomes clearer and wiser when you live alone, because there's finally space for it to be heard. Now, that kind of personal clarity often leads to something else: creativity. When we talk about creativity, most people imagine painting or writing or music. But creativity can be anything. It's how you solve problems, how you express yourself, how you bring joy into your day. And living alone opens up a world of creative freedom. No one's judging your choices. Want to paint the walls a bold color? Go for it. Want to turn the guest room into an art studio, or a sewing nook, or a mini library? It's entirely up to you. Want to dance in the kitchen while making scrambled eggs? Who's stopping you? That creative freedom becomes even more important as you age, because it keeps your mind active, your imagination alive, and your days full of discovery. Many older adults find that their most creative years begin after 60, not because they suddenly become more artistic, but because they finally have the space and time to explore. I once heard about a man in his 70s who built tiny wooden boats in his garage. He'd never done it before, not once, but he picked up a book from the library, watched a few videos, and just started. At first, he made mistakes, but over time, those little boats became beautiful. His hands were slower than they once were, but his spirit was sharper. And he said, "I've never felt more alive than when I'm carving out something new." That kind of creative energy doesn't require talent. It just requires permission. Permission to try, to play, to fail, to enjoy. And living alone grants you that permission. You're free to follow your own spark, whatever shape it takes. And while we're on the subject of doing things your own way, let's talk about another unexpected gift of living alone: renewed appreciation for simplicity. In a world that constantly tells us to want more things, more status, more plans, living alone can gently shift your attention to what truly matters. You begin to notice the quiet joys that once got lost in the noise. A well-made cup of tea, a soft blanket, the sunlight moving across the floor, the way a favorite book feels in your hands, the sound of the rain when there's no one else to interrupt it. You become more present, more intentional. You don't need to impress anyone or rush through your day to keep up with others. Your life becomes less about doing and more about being. And that shift, subtle as it is, can be deeply healing. Many people who live alone in older age say they begin to own fewer things, but love them more. They choose comfort over clutter, quality over quantity. They simplify their meals, their schedules, even their wardrobes, not out of necessity, but out of clarity. They see what brings joy and let go of what doesn't. And that kind of simplicity leads to a more peaceful home, not just in appearance, but in energy. It's easier to keep things tidy, easier to find what you need, easier to feel calm and in control. Your home becomes a reflection of your inner life, steady, uncluttered, and full of quiet meaning. Of course, none of this means that every day is perfect. There will still be hard moments, days when the silence feels too quiet, times when you miss someone or feel uncertain or wish you had a bit more company. That's normal. That's human. But the beauty of living alone is that it allows you to feel those emotions fully, without distraction, and then to process them in your own way. You're not performing strength for anyone. You're living it, day by day, moment by moment, with honesty and courage. And don't forget, living alone doesn't mean doing everything alone. In fact, the more grounded and comfortable you are in your own company, the more open you often become to new kinds of connection. Whether it's joining a community center class, walking with a neighbor, volunteering, or simply chatting with someone at the market, These moments become choices, not obligations. And that makes all the difference. Because when your cup is full, you share from a place of abundance, not exhaustion. When you've had quiet time to rest and reflect, you show up with a clearer mind and a fuller heart. You no longer give from pressure, you give from overflow, and that's the best kind of giving. So here we are, looking at a life that might seem, on the surface, a little quiet, maybe even uneventful. But if we peel back the curtain just a little, we find a world that is rich, alive, full of personal meaning. A world where your time is truly your own, where you rediscover old passions and explore new ones, where your thoughts are uninterrupted and your spirit is nourished. Living alone doesn't mean being forgotten. It doesn't mean being left behind. It means stepping into a new kind of life, one that asks less of you outwardly, but offers so much more inwardly. It means becoming your own companion, your own caretaker, your own source of peace. And if you let it, it can become the most liberating chapter of your life yet. There's something deeply dignified about choosing how you live. And when you live alone, especially in your later years, that dignity becomes more than just a quiet feeling. It becomes a way of life. It's in the way you arrange your morning, the way you sip your tea, the way you decide what matters and what no longer does. No explanations needed, no compromises required. You've earned this chapter, and now you get to write it yourself. Let's keep unfolding the picture of what that life can look like, because we're not just talking about silence or independence. We're talking about a deeper transformation. Something I believe is one of the most powerful parts of living alone as an older person: personal growth. It might seem like an unusual word to use after 60, 70, or 80, but why? Why should growth stop just because our birthdays have gone past a certain number? The truth is, when you live alone, you often begin growing in ways you never expected. Not just in new skills or hobbies, but in how you see yourself in the world. Maybe you've spent decades putting others first, raising children, supporting a spouse, working long hours, managing a household. That kind of life builds strength, no doubt, but it also leaves little room for asking questions like, what do I want now? What kind of person am I becoming? What still excites me? Living alone creates space for those questions. It gives you the silence and solitude to reflect without interruption. You might find that your values shift slightly. You may become more patient with yourself, more curious, more forgiving, or more willing to speak up for what you need. I once spoke with a man in his 70s who told me, "I've learned more about myself in the last 5 years than I did in the 50 before." He had lived alone since retirement, and at first he was afraid of the quiet. But gradually it became his teacher. He started journaling in the evenings. He took long walks without his phone, just listening to the birds and his thoughts. And slowly he began to see the version of himself that had always been waiting underneath the noise. "It's like I finally came home," he said, "not just to my house, but to me." That kind of inner growth often happens slowly, not with fireworks or grand revelations, but with gentle awareness, a shift in how you handle stress, a softening toward old regrets, a sense of peace in simply being. And that growth is one of the greatest gifts of living alone. You're not just filling time, you're becoming more you. Now with that comes something else just as powerful: choice over your own energy. This is something we don't talk about often enough, but as we age, our energy becomes one of our most precious resources. It's not just about physical strength, it's about emotional energy, mental space, the bandwidth we have for the world. And when you live alone, you start to notice where your energy goes and where it shouldn't go. Maybe in the past, you used to spend your days putting out fires for everyone else, or you tolerated draining conversations, loud environments, or habits that didn't serve you, simply because you were in shared spaces. But now you get to protect your energy. You get to decide what kind of atmosphere you want in your home and in your life. That might mean choosing soft music over background television, or it might mean no sound at all, just the hush of the afternoon breeze. It might mean fewer social commitments and more meaningful ones. It might mean saying no without guilt and saying yes only when something truly feels right. When you begin to live like this, with intention, you start to feel better, less exhausted, less overstimulated, more aligned with what feels natural. You stop overextending and start replenishing. It's not selfish, it's smart, it's wise, and it's necessary. Because when you conserve your energy, you use it for things that matter. Connecting with loved ones, creating something meaningful, caring for your health, or simply enjoying your day. You become the manager of your own well-being. And when that happens, even small moments feel rich again. Something else begins to shift as well, your sense of presence. Have you noticed that when you live alone, time starts to feel different? There's no one rushing you, no one interrupting your thoughts. A cup of tea becomes a ritual. Folding laundry becomes meditative. Reading a few pages of a book becomes a journey. You become more aware of the moment you're in, because there's no one pulling you out of it. And in that presence, gratitude naturally starts to bloom. Not in a forced way, not as something you should feel, but as something that arrives on its own, like light coming through a window in the late afternoon. You begin to notice the way your body still moves, even if it's slower, the way your mind still remembers, even if some things slip away, the way the sky still changes colors and the wind still whispers in the trees. When you live alone, these moments are no longer background noise. They are the music of your life, and they bring with them a quiet, powerful appreciation. You don't take things for granted as easily. You don't rush past beauty. You don't ignore the way your heart still beats, still feels, still hopes. That hope, by the way, is something you carry with you. Not because everything is easy, but because you know how to keep going. Living alone teaches you resilience in ways you may never have imagined. It shows you that you can wake up each morning and make it a good day, even if no one else is there to cheer you on. It shows you that you can face moments of silence, moments of uncertainty, and still move forward with grace. It shows you that even if the world doesn't always see your strength, you know it's there. And that, perhaps more than anything else, is what living alone offers you. Ownership of your own story. This chapter of life isn't being written by someone else. It's not being shaped by obligation or noise or anyone else's timeline. It's yours. You are the author now. And whether the days are quiet or full, long or short, peaceful or sometimes a little messy, they are your days. You decide how they begin. You decide how they end. And there is so much beauty in that. You don't need permission to feel proud of the life you're living. You don't need anyone else to validate your joy. You are proof that growth, freedom, and fulfillment don't stop after a certain age. In fact, sometimes they start there. So take a breath. Take a look around your space, however simple or small. This is your sanctuary. This is your garden to tend, your story to write, your life to savor. And what a life it is. There's a quiet moment in the early morning when the house is still and the world hasn't quite woken up yet. The sun stretches its first rays through the curtains, and for a few seconds there's only you, your breath, your thoughts, the stillness around you. And in that moment, you realize something powerful. You're not alone. You're with yourself, and that is enough. As we come to the final part of this conversation, I want to say something clearly and directly. Living alone in your later years is not something to be feared, pitied, or avoided. It's something to be understood, embraced, and even celebrated. Because while it may come with its own challenges, it also comes with deep, personal rewards, ones that often go unnoticed in the noise of modern life. You've heard it throughout this journey. The freedom to set your own pace, the peace that comes from emotional independence, the clarity that grows from solitude, the renewed appreciation for life's simple pleasures, the creativity that blossoms without judgment, and the power of choosing where your energy goes. All of it adds up to something rare and beautiful, a life designed with intention. You see, when you live alone, you begin to listen to your own life in a new way. You hear what brings you comfort. You notice what inspires you. You become more attentive to what your body needs, what your spirit longs for, and what your heart still hopes to feel. And you begin to realize this chapter of life isn't about winding down. It's about coming alive differently. Yes, you may move a little slower. Yes, your days may be quieter. But there is richness in that rhythm. There is strength in that silence. There is joy in being able to say, this is my home, my day, my story, and I'm living it my way. Maybe that means taking long walks with no destination. Maybe it means sitting on the porch in the evening, watching the sky change. Maybe it means learning something new or reconnecting with something old. Whatever it is, it's yours. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. You don't have to explain why you chose this life. You've lived enough, loved enough, given enough to finally be allowed to simply be. And I want you to remember this, because it's easy to forget in a world that's always measuring us by youth, noise, and speed. Your life still holds value. Your days still matter. You still matter. Living alone doesn't make you invisible. It doesn't make you less vibrant, less capable, or less deserving of joy. In fact, it often reveals the parts of you that were buried under years of busyness and obligation. It brings those parts back into the light, and when they return, you begin to feel whole again, not as who you used to be, but as who you truly are now. You've earned this stillness, you've earned this autonomy, and with it, you've also earned the right to feel proud of the life you're creating, one quiet morning at a time. Now, maybe your days aren't perfect. Maybe you miss someone. Maybe you wish things had turned out differently. That's okay. Those feelings are real, and they're valid. But so is the hope that still flickers inside you. So is the laughter that still escapes sometimes. So is the smile you feel when you realize you've made peace with yourself. Living alone doesn't mean you walk through life without connection. It just means you carry your own light now. You don't rely on others to fill your time or shape your mood. You find that light inside, and you learn how to keep it glowing, even on quiet days, especially on quiet days. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from this video, it's this. You are enough. You don't need a full house to have a full heart. You don't need constant company to feel complete. And you don't need permission to enjoy the life you've built. So whether your home is filled with music or silence, whether your days are busy or peaceful, whether you're just beginning to embrace this life alone, or you've been living it for years, I hope you recognize the strength, the wisdom, and the beauty in your journey. Let it remind you that aging is not a decline, but a deepening, not a retreat, but a return to your truest self. And before we finish, I'd love to hear from you. In the comments, share what you've discovered about yourself while living alone. What small joys have surprised you? What lessons have made you stronger? What quiet rituals bring you peace? When you share your voice, you inspire others. Others who might just be stepping into this chapter for the first time. Others who feel unsure or alone. Others who need the gentle reminder that living alone is not the end of connection, but the beginning of a new kind. So if this video resonated with you, give it a like. Subscribe to the channel for more conversations like this about aging, wisdom, health, and the art of living fully at every stage of life. And share this video with someone who might need it today. You never know what difference it might make. As we close, I want to leave you with one final thought. Even the quietest life can echo with joy. Even a still home can be filled with purpose. Even one person, living alone, can carry the warmth of 1,000 sunsets in their heart. So here's to you. Here's to living honestly, gently, fully. Here's to the incredible beauty of becoming who you are, with no one else watching, except maybe the birds at the window. I wish you a full and joyful life at any age, especially now.